today we are back. Ace is back. Ace. Yeah, he couldn't be bothered. But he's here. He's right there. And today we are doing a couple short stories from Grimm's Fairy Tales. Or we're doing a couple of Grimm's Fairy Tales, whatever you want to say. Either way, let's get into it. We are starting with one called The Table, the Ass, and the Stick. One thing about the Brothers Grimm is they love a story with a donkey in it. There was once a tailor who had 3 sons and 1 goat. And the goat, as she nourished them all with her milk, was obliged to have good food, and so she was led every day down to the willows by the waterside, and this business the sons did in turn. One day, the eldest took the goat to the churchyard where the best sprouts are, that she might eat her fill and gambol about. In the evening, she might frolic. In the evening, when it was time to go home, he said, "Well, goat, have you had enough?" The goat answered, "I am so full I cannot pull another blade of grass. Bah, bah." "Then come home," said the youth, and fastened a string to her, led her to her stall, and fastened her up. "Now," said the old tailor, "has the goat had her proper food?" "Oh," answered the son, "she is so full she can no more pull." But the father, wishing to see for himself, went out to the stall, stroked his dear goat, and said, "My dear goat, are you full?" And the goat answered, "How can I be full? There was nothing to pull, though I looked all about me. Bah, bah." "What is this I hear?" cried the tailor, and he ran and called out to the youth, "Oh, you liar, to say that the goat was full, and she has been hungry all the time." And in his wrath he took up his yard measure and drove his son out of the house with many blows. The next day came the turn of the second son, and he found a fine place in the garden hedge where there were good green sprouts, and the goat ate them all up. In the evening, when he had came to lead her home, he said, "Well, goat, have you had enough?" And the goat answered, "I am so full I could not pull another blade of grass. Bah, bah." "Then come home," said the youth, and led her home and tied her up. "Now," said the old tailor, "has the goat had her proper food?" "Oh," answered the son, "she is so full she no more can pull." The tailor, feeling satisfied, went out to the stall and said, "My dear goat, are you really full?" And the goat answered, "How can I be full? There was nothing to pull, though I looked all about me. Bah, bah." "The good-for-nothing rascal," cried the tailor, "to let the dear creature go fasting." And running back, he chased the youth with his yard wand out of the house. Then came the turn of the third son, who, meaning to make all sure, found some shrubs with the finest sprouts possible and left the goat to devour them. In the evening, when he came to lead her home, he said, "Well, goat, are you full?" And the goat answered, "I am so full I could not pull another blade of grass. Bah, bah." "Then come home," said the youth, and he took her to her stall and fastened her up. "Now," said the old tailor, "has the goat had her proper food?" "Oh," answered the son, "she is so full she no more can pull." But the tailor, not trusting his word, went to the goat and said, "My dear goat, are you really full?" The malicious animal answered, "How can I be full? There was nothing to pull, though I looked all about me. Bah, bah." "Oh, the wretches," cried the tailor. "The one is good for nothing and careless as the other. I will no longer have such fools about me." And rushing back in his wrath, he laid about him with his yard wand and belaboured his son's back so unmercifully that he ran away out of the house. So the old tailor was left alone with the goat. The next day he went out to the stall and let out the goat, saying, "Come, my dear creature, I will take you myself to the willows." So he led her by the string and brought her to the green hedges and pastures, where there was plenty of food for her to taste, and saying to her, "Now for once you can eat to your heart's content," he left her there till the evening. Then he returned and said, "Well, goat, are you full?" She answered, "I am so full I could not pull another blade of grass. Bah, bah." "Then come home," said the tailor, and leading her to the stall, he fastened her up. Before he left her, he turned to the goat once more, saying, "Now then, for once you are full." But the animal actually cried, "How can I be full? There was nothing to pull, though I looked all about me. Bah, bah." Take a shot every time I baa like a goat. When the tailor heard that, he marveled and saw at once that his 3 sons had been sent away without reason. "Wait a minute," cried he. "You ungrateful creature! It is not enough merely to drive you away. I will teach you to show your face again among honorable tailors." So in haste he went and fetched his razor, and seizing the goat, he shaved her head as smooth as the palm of his hand. And as the yard measure was too honorable a weapon, he took the whip and fetched her such a crack that with many a jump and spring she ran away. The tailor felt very sad as he sat alone in his house, and would willingly have had his sons back again, but no one knew where they had gone. The eldest son, when he was driven from home, apprenticed himself to a joiner, and he applied himself diligently to his trade. And when the time came for him to travel, his master gave him a little table, nothing much to look at, and made of common wood, but it had one great quality. When anyone set it down and said, "Table, be covered," all at once the good little table had a clean cloth on it, and a plate, a knife and fork, and dishes with roast and boiled, and a large glass of red wine sparkling so as to cheer the heart. The young apprentice thought he was set up for life, and he went merrily out in the world and never cared whether an inn were good or bad, or whether he could get anything to eat there or not. When he was hungry, it did not matter where he was, whether in the fields, in the woods, or in a meadow. He set down his table and said, "Be covered," and there he was provided with everything that his heart could wish. At last it occurred to him that he would go back to his father, whose wrath might by this time have subsided, and perhaps because of the wonderful table he might receive him again gladly. It happened that one evening during his journey home he came to an inn that was quite full of guests, who bade him welcome and asked him to sit down with them and eat, as otherwise he would have found some difficulty in getting anything. "No," answered the joiner, "I could not think of depriving you. You had much better be my guests." Then they laughed and thought he must be joking, but he brought his little wooden table and put it in the middle of the room and said, "Table, be covered." Immediately it was set out with food much better than the landlord had been able to provide, and the good smell of it greeted the noses of the guests very agreeably. "Fall to, good friends," said the joiner, and the guests, when they saw how good it was, needed no second asking, but taking up knife and fork fell to valiantly. What seemed most wonderful was that when a dish was empty, immediately a full one stood in its place. All the while the landlord stood in a corner and watched all that went on. He could not tell what to say about it, but he thought, "Such cooking as that would make my inn prosper." The joiner and his fellowship kept it up very merrily until late at night. At last they went to sleep, and the young joiner, going to bed, left his wishing table standing against the wall. The landlord, however, could not sleep for thinking of the table, and he remembered that there was in his lumber room an old table very like it, so he fetched it, and taking away the joiner's table, he left the other in its place. The next morning, the joiner paid his reckoning, took up the table, not dreaming that he was carrying off the wrong one, and went on his way. About noon he reached home, and his father received him with great joy. "Now, my dear son, what have you learned?" said he to him. I have learned to be a joiner, father," he answered. "That is a good trade," returned the father. "But what have you brought back with you from your travels?" "The best thing I've got, father, is this little table," said he. The tailor looked on at all sides and said, "You have certainly produced no masterpiece. It is a rubbishly old table." "But it is a very wonderful one," answered the son. "When I set it down and tell it to be covered, at once the finest meats are standing on it, and wine so good that it cheers the heart. Let us invite all the friends and neighbors, that they may feast and enjoy themselves, for the table will provide enough for all." When the company was all assembled, he put his table in the middle of the room and said, "Table, be covered." But the table never stirred, and remained just as empty as any other table that does not understand talking. When the poor joiner saw that the table remained unfurnished, he felt ashamed to stand there a fool. The company laughed at him freely, and were obliged to return unfilled and uncheered to their houses. The father gathered his pieces together and returned to his tailoring, and the son went to work under another master. The second son had bound himself apprentice to a miller, and when his time was up, his master said to him, "As you have behaved yourself so well, I will give you an ass of a remarkable kind. He will draw no cart and carry no sack." "What is the good of him, then?" asked the young apprentice. "He spits out gold," answered the miller. "If you put a cloth before him and say, 'Bricklebrit,' out comes gold pieces." "That is a capital thing," said the apprentice, and thanking his master, he went out into the world. Whenever he wanted gold, he had only to say "Bricklebrit" to his ass, and there was a shower of gold pieces, and so he had no cares as he travelled about. Wherever he came, he lived on the best, and the dearer the better, as his purse was always full. And when he had been looking about him about the world a long time, he thought he would go and find out his father, who would perhaps forget his anger and receive him kindly because of his gold ass. And it happened that he came to a lodge in the same inn where his brother's table had been exchanged. He was leading his ass in his hand, and the landlord was for taking the ass from him to tie it up. But the young apprentice said, "Don't trouble yourself, old fellow. I will take him into the stable myself and tie him up, and then I shall know where to find him." The landlord thought this was very strange, and he never supposed that a man who was accustomed to look after his ass himself would have much to spend. But when the stranger, feeling in his pocket, took out 2 gold pieces and told him to get him something good for supper, the landlord stared and ran and fetched the best that could be got. After supper, the guests called the reckoning, and the landlord, wanting to get all the profit he could, said that it would amount to 2 gold pieces more. The apprentice felt in his pocket, but his gold had come to an end. "Wait a moment, landlord," said he. "I will go and fetch some money." Sorry, I just got a message. "I will go and fetch some money." And he went out of the room, carrying the tablecloth with him. The landlord could not tell what to make of it, and, curious to know his proceedings, slipped after him, and as the guest shut the stable door, he peeped in through a knothole. Then he saw how the stranger spread the cloth before the ass, saying "Bricklebrit," and directly the ass spat out gold, which rained upon the ground. "Dear me," said the landlord, "that is an easy way of getting ducats. A purse of money like that is no bad thing." After that, the guest paid his reckoning and went to bed, but the landlord slipped down to the stable in the middle of the night, led the gold ass away, and tied up another ass in his place. The next morning, early the apprentice set forth with his ass, never doubting that it was the right one. By noon he came to his father's house, who was rejoiced to see him again, and received him gladly. "What trade have you taken up, my son?" asked the father. "I am a miller, dear father," answered he. "What have you brought home from your travels?" continued the father. "Nothing but an ass," answered the son. "We have plenty of asses here," said the father. "You had much better have brought me a nice goat." "Yes," answered the son, "but this is no common ass. When I say Bricklebrit, the good creature spits out a whole cloth full of gold pieces. Let me call all the neighbors together. I will make rich people of them all." "That will be fine," said the tailor. "Then I need labor no more at my needle." And he rushed out himself and called the neighbors together. As soon as they were all assembled, the miller called out to them to make room, and brought in the ass and spread his cloth before him. "Now pay attention," said he. And he cried, "Bricklebrit," but no gold pieces came, and that showed that the animal was not more scientific than any other ass. So the poor miller made a long face when he saw that he had been taken in, and begged pardon of the neighbors, who all went home as poor as they had come. And there was nothing for it but that the old man must take to his needle again, and that the young one should take service with a miller. The third brother had bound himself apprentice to a turner, and as turning is a very ingenious handicraft, it took him a long time to learn it. His brother told him in a letter how badly things had gone with them, and how on the last night of their travels the landlord deprived them of their treasures. When the young turner had learned his trade and was ready to travel, his master, to reward him for his good conduct, gave him a sack and told him that there was a stick inside it. "Your hair will look better in high bun." "Okay. Thanks." "I can hang up the sack, and it may be useful to me," said the young man. "But what is good of the stick?" "I will tell you," answered the master. "If anyone does you any harm, and you say, 'Stick out of the sack,' the stick will jump out upon them, and will belabor them so soundly that they shall not be able to move or to leave the place for a week, and it will not stop until you say, 'Stick into the sack.'" The apprentice thanked him and took up the sack and started on his travels, and when anyone attacked him, he would say, "Stick out of the sack," and directly out jumped the stick and dealt a shower of blows on the coat or jerkin and the back beneath, which quickly ended the affair. One evening, the young turner reached the inn where his two brothers had been taken in. He laid his knapsack on the table and began to describe all the wonderful things that he had seen in the world. "Yes," said he, "you may talk of your self-spreading table, gold-supplying ass, and so forth. Very good things. I do not deny, but they are nothing in comparison with the treasure that I have acquired and carry with me in that sack." Then the landlord opened his ears. "What in the world can it be?" thought he. "Very likely the sack is full of precious stones. I have a perfect right to it, for all good things come in threes." When bedtime came, the guest stretched himself on a bench and put his sack under his head for a pillow, and the landlord, when he thought the young man was sound asleep, came, and stooping down, pulled gently at the sack as to remove it cautiously, and put another in its place. The turner had only been waiting for this to happen, and just as the landlord was giving a last courageous pull, he cried, "Stick out of the sack!" Out flew the stick directly, and laid it too heartily on the landlord's back, and in vain he begged for mercy. The louder he cried, the harder the stick beat time against his back, until he fell exhausted to the ground. Then the turner said, "If you do not give me the table and the ass directly, this game shall begin all over again." "Oh, dear, no," cried the landlord, quite collapsed. "I will gladly give it all back again, if you would only make this terrible goblin go back into the sack." "Then," said the young man, "I will be generous instead of just, but beware." Then he cried, "Stick into the sack," and left him in peace. The next morning the turner set out with the table and the ass on his way home to his father. The tailor was very glad indeed to see him again, and asked what he had learned abroad. "My dear father," answered he, "I have become a turner." "A very ingenious handicraft," said the father. "And what have you brought with you from your travels?" "A very valuable thing, dear father," answered the son. "A stick and a sack." "What?" cried the father. "A stick! The thing is not worth so much trouble when you can cut one from any tree." "But it is not a common stick, dear father," said the young man. "When I say, 'Stick out of the bag,' it jumps the stick upon anyone who means to harm me, and makes him dance again, and does not leave off till he is beaten to the earth and asks pardon. Just look here, with this stick I have recovered the table and ass which the thieving landlord had taken from my two brothers. Now let them be sent for, and bid all the neighbors too, and they shall eat and drink to their heart's content, and I will fill their pockets with gold." The old tailor could not quite believe in such a thing, but he called his sons and all the neighbors together. Then the turner brought in the ass, opened a cloth before him, and said to his brother, "Now, my dear brother, speak to him." And the miller said, "Bricklebrit," and immediately the cloth was covered with gold pieces until they had all got more than they could carry away. I tell you this because it is a pity that you were not there. Then the turner set down the table and said, "Now, my dear brother, speak to it." And the joiner said, "Table, be covered." And directly it was covered and set forth plentifully with the richest dishes. Then they held a feast such as had never taken place in the tailor's house before, and the whole company remained through the night merry and content. The tailor after that locked up in a cupboard his needle and thread, his yard measure and goose, and lived ever after with his 3 sons in great joy and splendor. But what became of the goat, the unlucky cause of the tailor's sons being driven out? I'll tell you. She felt so ashamed of her bald head that she ran into a fox's hole and hid herself. When the fox came home, he caught sight of 2 great eyes staring at him out of the darkness, and was very frightened and ran away. A bear met him, and seeing that he looked very disturbed, asked him, "What is the matter, brother fox, that you should look like that?" "Oh dear," answered the fox, "a grisly beast is sitting in my hole, and he is staring at me with fiery eyes." "We will soon drive him out," said the bear, and went to the hole and looked in. But when he caught sight of the fiery eyes, he likewise felt great terror seize him, and not wishing to have anything to do with so grisly a beast, he made off. He was soon met by a bee, who remarked that he had not a very courageous air, and said to him, "Bear, you have a very depressed countenance. What has become of your high spirit?" "You may well ask," answered the bear. "In the fox's hole there sits a grisly beast with fiery eyes, and we cannot drive him out." The bee answered, "I know you despise me, bear. I am a poor feeble little creature, but I think I can help you." So she flew into the fox's hole, and settling on the goat's smooth-shaven head, stung her so severely that she jumped up, crying, "Bah! Bah!" and ran out like mad into the world, and to this hour no one knows where she ran to. Okay. Next one is called Tom Thumb. Wow, that one took a hot minute to read. This one is called Tom Thumb. There was once a poor countryman who used to sit in the chimney corner all evening and poke the fire while his wife sat at her spinning wheel. And he used to say, "How dull it is without any children about us. Our house is so quiet, and other people's houses so noisy and merry." "Yes," answered his wife, and sighed, "if we could only have one, and that one ever so little, no bigger than my thumb, how happy I should be. It would indeed be having our heart's desire." Now, it happened that after a while the woman had a child who was perfect in all his limbs, but no bigger than a thumb. Then the parents said, "He is just what we wished for, and we will love him very much." And then they named him, according to his stature, Tom Thumb. And though they gave him plenty of nourishment, he grew no bigger, but remained exactly the same size as when he was first born. And he had very good faculties, and was very quick and prudent, so that all he did prospered. One day his father made ready to go into the forest to cut wood, and he said, as if to himself, "Now I wish there was someone to bring the cart to me." "Oh, father," cried Tom Thumb, "I can bring the cart. Let me alone for that, and in proper time, too." Then the father laughed and said, "How will you manage that? You are much too little to hold the reins." "That has nothing to do with it, father. While my mother goes on with her spinning, I will sit in the horse's ear and tell him where to go." "Well," answered the father, "we will try it for once." When it was time to set off, the mother went on spinning, and after seeing Tom Thumb in the horse's ear, so he drove off, crying, "Giddy up! Giddy up!" So the horse went on quite as if his master were driving him, and drew the wagon along the right road to the wood. Now it happened just as they turned a corner, and a little fellow was calling out, "Giddy up!" that 2 strange men passed by. "Look," said one of them, "how is this? There goes a wagon, and the driver is calling to the horse, yet he is nowhere to be seen." "It is very strange," said the other. "We will follow the wagon and see where it goes." And the wagon went right through the wood up to the place where the wood had been hewed. When Tom Thumb caught sight of his father, he cried out, "Look, father, here I am with the wagon. Now take me down." The father held the horse with his left hand, and with the right he lifted down his little son out of the horse's ear, and Tom Thumb sat down on a stump, quite happy and content. When the 2 strangers saw him, they were struck dumb with wonder. At last, one of them, taking the other aside, said to him, "Look here, the little chap would make our fortune if we were to show him in the town for money. Suppose we buy him." So they went up to the woodcutter and said, "Sell the little man to us. We will take care he shall come to no harm." "No," answered the father. "He is the apple of my eye, and not for all the money in the world would I sell him." But Tom Thumb, when he heard what was going on, climbed up by his father's coat-tails, and perching himself on his shoulder, he whispered in his ear, "Father, you might as well let me go. I will come back soon again." Then the father gave him up to the 2 men for a large piece of money. They asked him where he would like to sit. "Oh, put me on the brim of your hat," said he. "There I can walk about and view the country and be in no danger of falling off." So they did as he wished, and when Tom Thumb had taken leave of his father, they all set off together. And they travelled on until it grew dusk, and the little fellow asked to be set down a little while for a change, and after some difficulty they consented. So the man took him down from his hat and set him in a field by the roadside, and he ran away directly, and, after creeping about among the furrows, he slipped suddenly into a mouse hole, just what he was looking for. "Good evening, my masters. You can go home without me," cried he to them, laughing. They ran up and felt about with their sticks in the mouse hole, but in vain. Tom Thumb crept further and further in, and as it was growing dark, they had to make the best of their way home, full of vexation and with empty purses. When Tom Thumb found they were gone, he crept out of his hiding place underground. "It is dangerous work groping about in these holes in the darkness," said he. "I might easily break my neck." But by good fortune he came upon an empty snail shell. "That's all right," said he. "Now I can get safely through the night," and he settled himself down in it. Before he had time to get to sleep, he heard two men pass by, and one was saying to the other, "How can we manage to get hold of the rich parson's gold and silver?" "I can tell you how," cried Tom Thumb. "How is this?" said one of the thieves, quite frightened. "I hear someone speak." So they stood still and listened, and Tom Thumb spoke again. "Take me with you. I will show you how to do it." "Where are you, then?" asked they. "Look about on the ground and notice where the voice comes from," answered he. At last they found him and lifted him up. "You little elf," said they, "how can you help us?" "Look here," answered he. "I can easily creep between the iron bars of the parson's room and hand out to you whatever you would like to have." "Very well," said they. "We will try what you can do." So when they came to the parsonage house, Tom Thumb crept into the room, but cried out with all his might, "Will you have all that is here?" So the thieves were frightened and said, "Do speak more softly, lest anyone should be awakened." But Tom Thumb made as if he did not hear them and cried out again, "What would you like? Will you have all that is here?" So that the cook, who was sleeping in a room hard by, heard it and raised herself in bed and listened. The thieves, however, in their fear of being discovered, had run back part of the way, and they took courage again, thinking that it was only a jest of the little fellow's. So they came back and whispered to him to be serious and to hand them out something. Then Tom Thumb called out once more as loud as he could, "Oh yes, I will give it all to you. Only put out your hands." Then the listening maid heard him distinctly that time and jumped out of bed and burst open the door. The thieves ran off as if the wild huntsmen were behind them, but the maid, as she could see nothing, went to fetch a light. And when she came back with one, Tom Thumb had taken himself off without being seen by her into the barn. And the maid, when she had looked in every hole and corner and found nothing, went back to bed at last and thought she must have been dreaming with her eyes and ears open. So Tom Thumb crept among the hay and found a comfortable nook to sleep in, where he intended to remain until it was day, and then to go home to his father and mother. But other troubles were to befall him. Indeed, there is nothing but trouble and worry in this world. Ain't that the truth? The maid got up at dawn of day to feed the cows. The first place she went was to the barn, where she took up an armful of hay, and it happened to be the very heap in which Tom Thumb lay asleep. And as he was so fast asleep that he was aware of nothing, and never waked until he was in the mouth of a cow who had taken him up with the hay. "Oh dear," cried he, "how is it that I have gotten into a mill?" But he soon found out where he was, and he had to be very careful not to get between the cow's teeth, and at last he had to descend into the cow's stomach. "The windows were forgotten when this little room was built," said he, "and the sunshine cannot get in. There is no light to be had." His quarters were in every way unpleasant to him, and what was the worst, new hay was constantly coming in, and the space was being filled up. At last he cried out in his extremity as loud as he could, "No more hay for me! No more hay for me!" The maid was then milking the cow, and as she heard a voice, but could see no one, and as it was the same voice that she had heard in the night, she was so frightened that she fell off her stool and spilled the milk. Then she ran in great haste to her master, crying, "Oh, master dear, the cow spoke!" "You must be crazy," answered her master, and he went himself to the cow-house to see what was the matter. No sooner had he put his foot inside the door than Tom Thumb cried out again, "No more hay for me! No more hay for me!" Then the parson himself was frightened, supposing that a bad spirit had entered into the cow, and he ordered her to be put to death. So she was killed, but the stomach, where Tom Thumb was lying, was thrown upon a dunghill. Tom Thumb had great trouble to work his way out of it, and he had made just a space big enough for his head to go through when a new misfortune happened. A hungry wolf ran up and swallowed the whole stomach at one gulp. But Tom Thumb did not lose courage. "Perhaps," thought he, "the wolf will listen to reason." And he cried out from inside the wolf, "My dear wolf, I can tell you where to get a splendid meal." "Where is it to be had?" asked the wolf. "In such and such a house, and you must creep into it through the drain, and there you will find cakes and bacon and broth and as much as you can eat." And he described to him his father's house. The wolf needed not to be told twice. He squeezed himself through the drain in the night and feasted in the storeroom to his heart's content. When at last he was satisfied, he wanted to go away again, but he had become so big that to creep the same way back was impossible. This Tom Thumb had reckoned upon, and began to make a terrible din inside the wolf, crying and calling as loud as he could. "Will you be quiet?" said the wolf. "You will wake the folks up." "Look here," cried the little man, "you are very well satisfied, and now I will do something for my own enjoyment," and began again to make all the noise he could. At last the father and mother were awakened, and they ran to the room door and peeped through the chink, and when they saw a wolf in occupation, they ran and fetched weapons, the man an axe and the woman a scythe. Stay behind, said the man as they entered the room. When I have given him a blow, and it does not seem to have killed him, then you must cut at him with your scythe. Then Tom Thumb heard his father's voice and cried, Dear father, I am here in the wolf's inside. Then the father called out, full of joy, Thank heaven that we have found our dear child, and told his wife to keep the scythe out of the way, lest Tom Thumb should be hurt with it. Then he drew near and struck the wolf such a blow on the head that he fell down dead, and then he fetched a knife and a pair of scissors, slit up the wolf's body, and let out the little fellow. Oh, what anxiety we have felt about you, said the father. Yes, father, I have seen a good deal of the world, and am very glad to breathe fresh air again. And where have you been all this time? Asked his father. Oh, I have been in a mouse hole, in a snail's shell, and in a cow's stomach and a wolf's inside. Now, I think, I will stay at home. And we will not part with you for all the kingdoms of the world, cried the parents, and they kissed and hugged their dear little Tom Thumb. And they gave him something to eat and to drink, and a new suit of clothes, as his old ones were soiled with travel. Yeah. That's that. And there's two more that we are going to read today. The first one is called How Mrs. Fox Married Again. The first version. Hello. There was once an old fox with 9 tails who wished to put his wife's affection to proof, pretended to be dead, and stretched himself under the bench quite stiff, and never moved a joint, on which Mrs. Fox retired to her room and locked herself in, while her maid, the cat, stayed by the kitchen fire and attended to the cooking. When it became known that the old fox was dead, some suitors prepared to come forward, and presently the maid heard someone knocking at the house door. She went and opened it, and there was a young fox, who said, What is she doing, Miss Cat? Is she sleeping or waking, or where is she at? And the cat answered, I am not asleep. I am quite wide awake. Perhaps you would know what I'm going to make. I'm melting some butter and warming some beer. Will it please you sit down and partake of my cheer? I definitely don't have pink eye. Yes, my eyes are different colors. Jackass. Thank you, Miss, said the fox. What is Mrs. Fox doing? The maid answered, She's sitting upstairs in her grief, and her eyes with her weeping are sore. For her sorrow she gets no relief. Now poor old Mr. Fox is no more. I don't have pink eye. My eyes are different colors. He's here. He's right there. Hi, buddy. Yeah. Now poor Mr. Fox is no more. But just tell her, miss, that a young fox has come to woo her. Very well, young master, answered the cat. Up went the cat, pit-a-pat, pit-a-pat. She knocked at the door, rat-a-tat, rat-a-tat. Mrs. Fox, are you there? Yes, yes, kitty dear. There's a suitor below. Shall I tell him to go? Oh, what is he like? Asked Mrs. Fox. Has he 9 beautiful tails like dear Mr. Fox? Oh, no, answered the cat. He has only 1. Then I won't have him, said Mrs. Fox. So the cat went downstairs, and the suitor went away. Soon there was another knock at the door. It was another fox come to woo. He had 2 tails, but he met with no better success than the first. Then there arrived more foxes, one after another, each one with more tails than the last, but they were all dismissed until there came one with 9 tails, just like old Mr. Fox. When the widow heard that, she cried full of joy to the cat. Now open the door and window outside, and turn old Mr. Fox outside. But before they could do so, up jumped old Mr. Fox from under the bench and cudgeled the whole pack, driving them with Mrs. Fox out of the house. No, he's not a real statue. He's a dog. AC. Hey. See? It's not like a puppet. I don't have any strings to maneuver his head. Yeah. Yeah, he's back. He's my little buddy. Okay. This one is called How Mrs. Fox Married Again, the second version. When old Mr. Fox died, there came a wolf to woo, and he knocked at the door, and the cat opened to him, and he made her a bow and said, Good day, Miss Cat, so brisk and gay. How is it that alone you stay, and what is it you cook today? The cat answered, Bread so white and milk so sweet. Will it please you sit and eat? Thank you very much, Miss Cat, answered the wolf. But is Mrs. Fox home? Then the cat said, She is sitting upstairs in her grief, and her eyes with her weeping are sore. From her sorrow she gets no relief. Now poor old Mr. Fox is no more. The wolf answered, Won't she take another spouse to protect her and her house? Upstairs went the cat, pit-a-pat, pit-a-pat. She knocked at the door, rat-a-tat, rat-a-tat. Mrs. Fox, are you there? Yes, yes, kitty dear. There's a suitor below. Shall I tell him to go? But Mrs. Fox asked, Has the gentleman red breeches and a sharp nose? No, answered the cat. Then I won't have him, said Mrs. Fox. After the wolf was sent away, there came a dog, a stag, a hare, a bear, a lion, and several other wild animals. But they all of them lacked the good endowments possessed by the late Mr. Fox, so that the cat had to send them all away. At last came a young fox, and Mrs. Fox inquired whether he had red breeches and a sharp nose. Yes, he has, said the cat. Then I will have him, said Mrs. Fox, and bade the cat make ready the wedding feast. Now, cat, sweep the parlors and bustle about, and open the window, turn Mr. Fox out. Then, if you've a fancy for anything nice, just manage to catch yourself a few mice. You may eat them alone. I do not want one. So she was married to the young Master Fox, with much dancing and rejoicing, and for anything I have heard to the contrary, they may be dancing still. Okay, that's all. That is where we are going to end today. Yeah, we're just at our time. Thank you so much for reading with me and hanging out with me. We will commence this probably again tomorrow. I don't know if I want to do Grimm's Tales or if it'll be from the Necronomicon. So, thank you. This will be on YouTube. Have a great day. Bye.